Okay, right? All we want, but until we're actually creating the movies, we're actually there with activism, then we're not necessitating the proper change. Does that make sense? Have I lost anybody? All right. What's next? We'll find out. I think this is you, right? All right. Come speak about the activist mindset.
So, first and foremost, obviously not a slant to anyone here, because a lot of times when we do things like this and we talk about getting involved, I feel like we're preaching to the choir, okay? If you're here, you're doing this, and you're not sitting on your couch just being passive. But the issue is, how do we, create that kind of mindset that we have here today? How do we create that in our children? How do we create that in our grandchildren? How do we create that in just, the youth that we have influence on in our lives? As he mentioned, it's impossible to be an activist with a passive mindset. Literally, activist means being active towards a goal. You can't be passive and expect change to happen. You can't be passive and expect to redeem the culture. And it's intertwined in everything we do and who we are. That's why we talked about this model of receiving, rejecting, and redeeming aspects of culture. This is something that we need to instill in our children. And even as, I have a 3-year-old, but even at that young age, I'm trying to instill, as he gets older and starts to understand some of these things, there are things we don't do, but not just that we don't do them because we don't do them, but there's a reason. As he's younger and he runs out into the street, I'm just going to yank him in. I'm just going to yell. I'm just going to do what I need to do to stop him from running into the street. But as he gets older, we can start to talk about the ramifications and why we're not running into the street. Or when it comes to politics, why we're not figuratively running into the street to be, hit by a big bus of government. That analogy just came off the top of my head. But anyway.
I thought you had a plan.
No, I didn't. That was good. Write that down. Write that down.
That's a good job.
But anyway, we have got to instill this activist mindset in our kids. And for some of us here, this is something that whether we grew up in it or not, it's something that we've kind of had to instill and create on our own. I know I've talked to many people that say that they didn't start getting involved until after their kids were out of the house or after. And so some of this takes time, but we've got to start doing it earlier and earlier. That's how we're going to affect change. And once again, I don't mean this to be a slant, because whether you have kids, whether you have, your kids are out of the household, it's not too late. There's grandchildren, and there's cousins, and there's nieces, and there's nephews, and there's always someone to be mentored. There's always someone to speak into their life a positive outlook. And so this brings us to our next point, and that's the role of parenting. It's an incredibly important role. It is not just something that we do and our goal is just to get the kids out of the house. Although that is one of the goals, get the kids out of the house. But it's more than that, and the role of the parent cannot be underestimated.
It's almost like God made the family the basic building block of society for a reason. Am I crazy or what? All right. I am not a parenting guru, as if you guys need told that. Just a day in my household, you'd be like, this guy's giving parenting advice? That's crazy. It's like kids outside, walking down the hall, into the yard naked, which would be great if I actually knew they were outside in the first place. And don't hear about it 2 days later. Hey, Annie was running naked. Really? When? Was that when I was watching you or your mom? You. All right, let's not tell mom. Just joking. Open honesty in your marriage, great. All right, so when raising our children, it's my belief that we have two definitive tasks. I think these are ordained by God, but I also just think it makes sense. Even if you don't have a biblical worldview, even if you don't come from that, I think this makes sense. You want to raise godly men and women, and if you're one of those people, moral men and women, okay, fulfilling God's will for their lives. This is the fulfilling their destiny, okay? And I'm not talking in a Disney princess kind of way. I'm talking about in an actual, going to contribute to society kind of way. And then second, raise citizens who are full and active participants in the community. This is the part that I think we screw up as parents, okay? Because we have the mindset of, you know, I had to figure it out on my own. Nobody, you know, my dad didn't necessarily talk about these issues with me, or, you know, I just kind of had to figure it out in college, so my kid will be okay. Thank you for that, you know. People like, I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but adolescence now goes to age of 27. And I'm not joking, that's the actual figures. We have a whole like generation of men now called the Peter Pan syndrome. They don't do anything. And there's a whole dynamic on the reasons for this. And I'm not going to get into all that, but it's partly because I blame their parents. I know you're not supposed to, you know, well, they're individuals, you know, I can't help it if my kid's a loser. Well, yeah, you know, when you're not telling him no at 4 and nobody's telling him no at 27, there you go, and you let him live in your basement. I'm going to get off my soapbox. I'm going to get in trouble. The bottom line, though, is it's my job to raise active members in my community. Because I know this is going to shock everyone in this room. There's actually people who are more important in the world than myself. And there's actually people who are more important in the world than my precious little children. And unfortunately, we screw that up, right? We tell them that you are the most important thing in the world to me. And we put it all over Facebook because we don't want anybody else to think we're a bad parent, even though because we really don't think it. But we put it on Facebook because that's what the Good Mommy Club and Good Daddy Club tells us we got to do, right? We're supposed to put that out there. And my Madeline, she is the most important thing in the entire world to me. She's not. Really. I can think of a few people that are above her. My wife, for one, you know, and we wonder why marriages are horrible, right? You value my child more than me? That's kind of awkward and creepy, you know? And she has 5 siblings. So how does that work? I'm not allowed to have favorites. I do, but Madeline's not one of them. Don't tell her that. He knows, man. Madeline's 11, okay? Which means that she's starting to get hormonal. I'm allowed to say that? Is that bad? I don't know what the PC term for that is. Just edit that out and put the PC term in. I'm not too PC. But she has this attitude amongst herself. And so, you know, everything is 10 times worse than it actually is. Everyone hates her and nobody loves her, which is a shame. But I'm trying to raise her to be an active citizen in the community. So I don't think it's too mean to tell her that, well, if nobody loves you, it's kind of your fault because you're acting like a jerk to everybody. Like, who wants to love a jerk? You know?
Oh dear.
Not going to get any, you know, suitors that way, you know? Hey, she's crazy. There are people who are more important than her, right? But also that there's a community out there that's important. So Madeline, for all her faults, this is kind of my revenge, right? Because my dad was a pastor, so I always got the stories in front of everybody, and I don't get opportunities to tell stories to my kids, so this is one of those. But for all Madeline's faults, and there's many, she does volunteer for Concerned Veterans for America. And she's actually done over 1,500 completed surveys herself for our phone banks.